40% more. That could not be right. I stared at the spreadsheet, eyes locked on numbers that refused to change no matter how many times I refreshed the screen. My hand hovered over the mouse, unmoving, while my heart thudded in a slow, heavy rhythm. The document had been mistakenly sent by someone in HR, probably in a rush, and now here it was, glowing on my monitor like a quiet betrayal in black and white. Tyler Brooks, 11 months with the company, $138,400. Naomi Choi, just over a year in, $135,750. Miguel Ortiz, barely 8 months, $140,100. Each name was a slap in the face. Every single one of them had been trained by me. Every single one of them made between 35 and 40% more than my salary, $98,200. After 9 years. 9 years of loyalty, of early mornings and late nights, of solving problems no one else could untangle, of building processes from scratch that the company still relied on daily. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Elle. I am 34 years old, and I have worked as a senior operations strategist at a well-known logistics firm since I was 25. You know the kind of employee people describe as dependable and self-motivated? That is me. I am the one who never missed a deadline, the one who covered for others when they forgot deliverables, the one who made the impossible look routine, the one no one seemed to notice. Until I noticed them. I scrolled again, slower this time, as if going through it at a different speed would somehow reveal a mistake, some oversight, some hidden explanation. But there was none. I found my name, finally, halfway through the 3rd page. Buried. Forgotten. L. Morgan, 9 years, $98,200. The moment felt eerily quiet. The dull buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. The muted conversations around the open office space. The sound of someone tapping a pen against their desk. But for me, everything slowed. Everything narrowed. Because that number, that difference, was not just about money. It was about worth. About recognition. About the lie that loyalty still mattered. I stood up, legs moving on instinct more than decision. My laptop snapped shut with a soft but sharp click, and I walked straight to my manager's office. No email. No calendar invite. Just 2 knocks, and I entered. He looked up, eyebrows raised. Al? Everything all right? I placed my laptop on his desk and opened it to the spreadsheet. I need to understand this, I said. His expression barely flickered, but I saw it. That half-second recognition in his eyes told me everything. He had seen this coming, and he had no intention of addressing it. Al, you know I cannot discuss other employees' compensation, he began, trying for calm authority. I am not asking about theirs. I am asking about mine. I pointed at the screen. 9 years. I have trained most of these people. I built the system that evaluates their performance. I created the entire framework for onboarding and quality assurance. How am I earning less than someone with 8 months of experience? He sighed, leaning back in his chair, like he had been preparing for this. The market has changed, he said. We are hiring based on current industry rates. Your compensation was structured during a different time. So adjust it. It is not that simple. There are policies, pay bands, budget constraints. You received a 3% raise during the last review. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. Take it or leave it. I did not speak. I just stared at him, the weight of his indifference pressing against my chest like a stone. Was there anything else? He asked, glancing at the time. I left without a word. That night, I did not cry. I did not pace around the apartment or call my friend Arya to rant. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and began building a document I would come to call the ledger. Not just a list of my accomplishments, but a case study, 9 years' worth of problem-solving, innovation, and measurable impact. I started at the beginning. 2016, hired as operations coordinator. Developed a tracking system that reduced routing delays by 19% within the first 6 months. 2017, promoted to analyst. Designed a freight optimization model that saved the company $1.3 million in annual transport costs. 2018, trained a team of 7 new hires. Built internal documentation still used in onboarding today. 2019, negotiated vendor contracts, securing exclusive discounts that undercut competitors. Every initiative, every system, every dollar saved, and inefficiency removed. I documented it all with data, dates, and internal references. Not emotion, not complaints, just facts. By the time the sun started to rise, I had compiled 46 pages of strategy, contribution, and quantifiable results. I also had something else, a job offer. One I had not taken seriously until now. A competitor had reached out 3 weeks prior through a professional network, offering a role with a starting salary of $147,000. I had thanked them, said I was loyal to my current team, and turned it down. But I had saved the offer letter. At 8 a.m., I walked into the office with a quiet calm. No fury, no dramatics, just a plain envelope in my hand and a printout of the ledger. I walked past my manager's office without looking in, past the HR cubicles, straight to the top floor, to the corner office with the glass walls and the view of the skyline, the CEO's office. Asked his assistant if he was available. She looked surprised but nodded. When I stepped inside, he smiled. Good morning. Everything all right? Without a word, I placed the envelope and the document on his desk. What is this? An explanation. And a decision. I left the office before he could open it. By noon, I had an urgent meeting request in my inbox. From the CEO. Copied were the director of HR and my manager. The subject line, discussion, compensation discrepancies. Their expressions that they kept me waiting for exactly 11 minutes. Not 10, 11. Just enough to feel deliberate. A quiet, bureaucratic show of control. I sat in the glass-walled conference room, my copy of the ledger placed neatly in front of me. No phone. No distractions. Just patience. Calm, deliberate patience. Then the door opened. First in was CEO Alan Vickers, late 50s, silver temples, charismatic in the way that made people forget how little he actually said. Behind him was Lydia from HR, lips pursed, eyes scanning everything like it was all her job to control. And then came my manager, Travis, looking like he had swallowed a lemon. Alan said, sliding into a seat across from me. Thanks for coming. I read your document. He paused, folded his hands. It's quite thorough. I didn't respond. You've clearly put a lot of work into this, he continued. And your track record is impressive. Frankly, some of the figures you outlined, savings, process improvements, vendor efficiencies, I'll be honest, I wasn't aware of the full extent. That last part was intentional. He wanted me to know he wasn't the villain here, that his ignorance somehow absolved him. I said nothing, just listened. Travis jumped in. I think we can all agree Elle has made strong contributions to the team. But we do have standardized frameworks, and if we start making exceptions. Alan held up a hand. Travis, not yet. That shut him down. Alan turned back to me. You've also attached a competing offer? Yes. May I ask, why bring this to us now, instead of just accepting the other offer? I leaned forward slightly. Because I wanted to give the company a chance to correct what it missed. Before I left quietly. Or publicly. Lydia flinched at the word, publicly. I noticed. Alan looked at her, then back at me. What would it take to retain you? There it was. The question they never ask until you're halfway out the door. $150,000 base, I said. Retroactive to the start of Q1. A formal, written plan for recalibrating pay equity across the team I helped build. And removal of Travis from my reporting line. Travis sat up. Excuse me? I turned to him, calmly. I documented the pay disparities. You signed off on them. You also ignored multiple project proposals I submitted, proposals that were later approved when resubmitted under male counterparts' names. If this company values my work, it cannot be filtered through someone who actively undermines it. Silence. Not even Alan spoke for a full 10 seconds. Finally, he said, "Give us 48 hours. I stood. I'll wait 24. That evening, I didn't go home. I took a long walk. No headphones, no calls. Just me and the cool hum of the city settling into its evening rhythm. I didn't know if they would meet my conditions. But I had done something more important. I had shifted the balance. Not by begging, not by threatening, but by proving value with precision and demanding the respect I had earned. I returned home to an email flagged confidential. Subject line: internal audit request, urgent. It was from someone I didn't know. A junior analyst from compliance. Attached was a single PDF file. No message. Just the file. I opened it. It was a vendor invoice history. 3 years of payments to a supplier I'd never heard of, Stonewell Integration Services. Monthly payments. Always just under the invoice threshold that required executive cosign. A few thousands here. More later. Altogether, $2.7 million. No contact information. No physical address. Just a name. Repeatedly paid. Something was wrong. I called the analyst immediately. He picked up on the first ring. I thought you should see it, he said. Why me? Because I've seen your work. And because no one else here will risk it. He hung up. The next morning, I did 2 things before heading into the office. First, I compiled the invoice history into a visual report, timeline, payment frequencies, vendor inconsistencies, flagged entries. Second, I dug into who approved the payments. They had been authorized through legal. Specifically, Harold Kemp, the chief legal counsel. I'd barely spoken to him in 9 years, but I knew his reputation. Quiet, unassuming. Polished. Untouchable. But this vendor? It was fake. No online records, no matching state business registry, and no project outcomes linked to those payments. It was fraud. I printed everything and walked straight to Alan's office again. No assistant. No delay. He saw my face and waved me in instantly. What is it? I placed the second envelope on his desk. Your answer. To the question of what it would take to retain me? That has changed. He opened the packet, began flipping through the pages. His eyes widened by page 3. You're telling me this was routed through our legal department? Yes. He picked up his phone immediately. Get Lydia and our internal audit head in here. Now. He looked back at me. What do you want? A formal promotion. VP of Operational Integrity. $155,000 base. Performance equity. And the ability to hire my own team, including the analyst who sent this to me. Alan didn't even hesitate. Done. 2 days later, the board held an emergency meeting. 3 weeks later, Harold Kemp was escorted out of the building in silence. Travis was reassigned to a non-managerial role. His office was cleared before noon, and I sat quietly in my new office, 2 floors up, same skyline view. This time with a locked file cabinet and a seat at the executive table. But I wasn't finished. Because while they scrambled to clean house, I was already in talks with a competitor. Not just for a role, for a partnership. And what I was planning next would leave their jaws on the floor. By week 3 in my new role, the silence in the executive wing wasn't the dignified quiet of leadership. It was the kind that follows a storm. One that leaves debris behind. The kind where people lower their voices in corridors and suddenly remember to CC legal on every email. And they all looked at me differently now. Some with admiration, some with fear, but all of them with caution. Because I hadn't just exposed a $2.7 million fraud or negotiated a title bump. I had done it with evidence, clarity, and control. I hadn't raised my voice, filed complaints, or whispered in corners. I had simply documented the truth and handed it to the right people. That terrified them. But the truth was, I wasn't here to terrify. I was here to finish what I started. Because the rot didn't stop at Harold Kemp or my old manager Travis. It was embedded in the culture, subtle, polished, and systemic. The kind that rewarded appearances over outcomes. The kind that buried loyal contributors in red tape while handing 6-figure bonuses to the loudest self-promoters. I wasn't here to play along anymore. I was here to rewrite the game. It started with a spreadsheet. The same kind of spreadsheet that had sparked this entire war. Except this one? I built myself. Using quiet access to the payroll system, legally granted now that I sat on the Compensation Oversight Committee, I ran a comparative analysis across departments, roles, gender, tenure, and promotion timelines. What I found? Employees with less than 2 years of experience were out-earning mid-level contributors by up to 35%. Male employees were, on average, promoted 9 months sooner than women with identical or stronger performance ratings. And most damning, one VP had received a discretionary performance bonus 6 quarters in a row, despite heading a team with declining output. It was time to go public. Not on social media. Not in the press. Internally. Visibly. Strategically. I proposed a town hall. I think we need a transparent forum, I told Alan. Let employees know change is happening. Let them see the math. Alan paused. He was still recovering from the embarrassment of the Herald fallout. You're sure you want to own that? Completely. He agreed, reluctantly. The email went out that afternoon. Subject: Compensation, Transparency, and Equity. A candid update from leadership. Attendance wasn't just high. It was standing room only. I stood at the front of the auditorium with a simple clicker and a single slide deck. No logos. No filler. Just data. I walked them through it all. The gaps. The outdated policies. The arbitrary bonuses. The inequity baked into performance reviews. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. By the time I finished, there was silence. Then applause. Not polite clapping. Not forced enthusiasm. Real applause from people who had sat silently under decades of politics and uneven recognition. Alan stood and nodded, slowly. He had no choice. The next day, we launched a company-wide compensation recalibration. Role audits. Equity reviews. Promotion track disclosures. We made internal salaries visible within ranges. And we opened a direct feedback line, anonymous if desired, straight to my desk. We received 119 messages in the first 48 hours. Change was happening. But it was already too late for the company, because I had never planned to stay. 2 months before the town hall, I had begun meeting quietly with Catherine Walsh, founder and CEO of Viridian Partners, one of our fastest-growing competitors. We met for the first time in a quiet downtown cafe, just 2 blocks from my apartment. No suits. No assistants. Just 2 women who knew exactly what the corporate world thought of them and how they had survived it. I've followed your work since the vendor exposure, she said, stirring her coffee. And I heard about the pay audit. Bold move. I wasn't trying to be bold, I said. Just honest. Honest is bold now, she replied and smiled. By our second meeting, she wasn't recruiting me. She was offering me a seat at the table. A partner-level seat. We don't just need another executive, she said. We need someone to design our internal systems from the ground up. Transparent comp structures. Performance-linked equity. True accountability. No optics. Just integrity. It wasn't just an offer. It was a blueprint. I said yes. I gave my notice 3 weeks after the town hall, effective immediately. Alan was stunned. You led the audit, he said. You were the reform. And I delivered everything I promised, I replied. But the house still smells like smoke. They offered me a counter again, this time $170,000 and a path to SVP. I turned it down. That afternoon, I handed my badge to Lydia. She didn't speak. Just nodded once. As I walked out of that glass building for the last time, I didn't look back. Because what I was walking toward was built for people like me. Viridian wasn't just different, it was precise. Focused. Intentionally designed to avoid the silent traps that had nearly buried me for nearly a decade. On my first day as Chief Strategy Partner, I was handed a whiteboard. Design your department, Catherine said. From scratch. So I did. Tiered salary bands with public visibility. Quarterly self-assessments paired with peer scoring. Blind reviews before promotion panels. Bonus structures based on collective impact, not loud individuals. And, most importantly, no one's title could exceed their value. Not even mine. Within 6 months, Veridian had cut turnover by 38%, attracted top-tier applicants from companies 3 times its size, and landed 2 multi-year contracts previously held by my former employer. They were struggling now. Word had spread about Herald, the audits, the pay gaps. A mid-level newspaper broke the story after a former employee leaked documents. Their valuation dropped. 2 clients pulled out. 3 senior leaders quietly resigned. The company was acquired, folded into a larger firm that stripped it down and absorbed its assets. I watched it happen without joy, without spite, only quiet satisfaction. Because when you've spent years being overlooked, underpaid, and undermined, there's no better revenge than thriving where they never thought you belonged. Not the grand gestures or the headline moments, but the small, quiet details. The smell of the old office carpets after a rainy morning. The brittle tone in Travis's voice when I first mentioned compensation disparity. The half-second Lydia's eyes flicked toward the door before she composed herself. They had all been so confident I'd never leave. And now, just 9 months after my exit, my former company, once a rising star in the industry, was being dissected on a live panel discussion titled, "When Corporate Culture Fails Quietly, the Collapse of Hollow Leadership." I didn't speak on that panel. I didn't need to. My work spoke for me, louder now than ever. At Veridian, the systems we'd built were no longer just prototypes. They were being modeled, duplicated, referenced in HR policy circles and strategy reports across the industry. Transparency wasn't just a buzzword anymore. It was a benchmark. And our firm, leaner, sharper, quieter, was leading the shift. And yet, I wasn't resting. Because I knew what came next. When people couldn't discredit your work, they tried to reclaim it. It started with a message request. From Travis. I saw the preview. "Hey Elle, just wanted to say." I didn't open it. Then came the LinkedIn article, an oddly timed piece from Lydia, now independent consultant, writing about lessons learned in equitable leadership and citing an internal audit I once helped lead. She hadn't, but I didn't respond, because silence is power, too. Still, I watched. Carefully. Because behind the public contrition, a few of them were quietly trying to reassemble, consulting for startups, advising mid-stage firms, selling lessons from a shipwreck they had helped create. I didn't mind. Let them chase credibility in rooms where their history wasn't yet known. Meanwhile, I was building something real. My department at Veridian had grown from 3 to 12. Not because of funding, but because we designed it to grow only when needed. No padding. No vanity hires. Every role was mapped to outcomes, not appearances. We weren't just tracking efficiency, we were eliminating the old game. One of the newer analysts, Sarah, came to me after project review. She looked nervous. "I just wanted to ask," she said, "how did you know when to walk away? From the old place, I mean." It caught me off guard. "Was it when they ignored you?" she continued. "Or when you stopped believing it would get better?" I thought for a moment. "It was when I realized I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable," I said. "I was asking to be seen accurately, to be valued accordingly. And they saw that as a threat." She nodded, quiet. I remembered that version of myself in her eyes. The version who used to reword emails 10 times to sound collegial. Who double-checked tone, softened every truth, apologized for being correct. That version was gone. And in her place was someone who now signed checks, made policy, and picked the chairs in the boardroom. Not just the seat. But my work still wasn't finished. Because I hadn't just left a company, I had left behind a lesson. And too many companies hadn't learned it yet. So I began writing. Not a blog. A book. Title, Measured. What loyalty costs in the wrong hands, and how to reclaim your value. I wrote every chapter in the early mornings before meetings, before calls. No ghostwriters. Just the raw truth of what I'd lived. How high performers are quietly exploited. How policy becomes a shield for cowardice. And how data, when used without fear, can break through the most polished lies. By the time the manuscript was finished, my inbox was full. Agents, publishers, conferences, Private invitations. The irony? Some of the companies that ignored me 9 years ago were now offering keynote platforms. I turned them down. Instead, I launched the book through an independent press, distributed directly to professional networks, university programs, and executive leadership tracks. It sold 30,000 copies in the first 3 weeks. And then, I got the call. Catherine said, stepping into my office one crisp Friday morning. You've got an invitation. Fortune 100 firm. Global. $4.2 billion revenue. They're asking for a full policy overhaul. No consultants. They want you. Me? I said. Not Viridian? They want you to lead the process. And they're offering temporary autonomy. Full design freedom. 1 year, executive terms. I leaned back, silent. They'll never give you this kind of control again, Catherine added. This is a first-mover moment. I nodded, then asked, do they know I won't play nice? They're counting on it. 2 weeks later, I walked into a glass tower with nothing but a laptop, a notepad, and a signed contract worth more than my entire 9 years at the previous company combined. The CEO shook my hand, personally. Just so you know, he said, I read your book. Twice. I smiled. Then you know I won't be easy. He grinned back. That's why you're here. And as I walked through their open floor plan, past departments still clinging to legacy systems, watching eyes tracking my movement, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my reach. Because I hadn't just walked away from injustice. I had turned it into a blueprint. And now I was being asked to scale it. You don't realize you've made history until you hear someone else explain it back to you. That moment came 3 months into the transformation project at the global firm that had brought me in, an internal summit where their chief of people stood at the podium, addressing over 1,000 employees. We are no longer optimizing for appearances, she said. We're optimizing for accuracy, because one outsider with a spreadsheet and a backbone showed us where we were bleeding talent and trust. I sat in the back row, invisible by choice. It was never about glory. It was about making sure what happened to me, what happens to thousands of professionals in silence every year, would never happen unchallenged again. In the first 30 days of my placement, I had torn through layers of bureaucracy that had gone untouched for a decade. Performance metrics? Biased and outdated. Bonus structures? Discretionary and disconnected from actual outcomes. Promotion reviews? Held behind closed doors 3 times a year by people who couldn't name the last 5 deliverables of the employees they were evaluating. It wasn't broken by accident. It was broken by design. But design, I'd learned, could be rewritten. I proposed a complete teardown, 5 phases, 12 months. No cosmetic tweaks. This was a rebuild, not a refresh. Phase 1, exposure. We made comp data visible, role bands, equity shares, performance bonuses across the organization. Not personalized, but clear enough to end speculation and force internal accountability. Phase 2, restructure. We built a compensation algorithm tied to market trends, internal performance, and tenure, updated quarterly, not annually. Phase 3, accountability. All leadership evaluations became multi-source, self, peer, and team. No more rubber stamping incompetence. Phase 4, equity review. We ran regression analyses across gender, race, and age, adjusted salaries where necessary, and published the results. And finally, Phase 5, legacy replacement. We rewrote the leadership DNA of the company, eliminating what they called unicorn hires, code for unchecked favoritism, and replacing it with succession planning rooted in impact, not impression. The board expected resistance. They got momentum. Because when you show people the rules are no longer rigged, they stop whispering and start building. Meanwhile, at Viridian, the culture I'd helped shape was flourishing. Our turnover rate dropped below 8%. Our gender pay gap closed within a 1.2% margin. And we became a case study in 3 MBA programs for sustainable leadership practices. Catherine called one evening from a panel in Chicago. They're asking about expansion, she said. About opening a second HQ. Where? Wherever you want, she said. Lead it. Build it. Call it yours. I didn't answer right away, because I had been thinking about something else. Not a new HQ, a new firm, not for profit, for impact. So, I built it. The Index Project, a private consultancy with a public mission to expose, measure, and redesign compensation and advancement systems across industries before people burned out, broke down, or walked away wondering if they'd imagined the injustice. We started small, just 5 of us. All women. All once overlooked. All brilliant. And in our first year, we turned down more clients than we accepted. Because we weren't here to polish reputations. We were here to burn down facades. I never did respond to Travis's message. But one day, I heard through a connection that he had moved into executive coaching. Apparently, his new philosophy focused on building trust after a breakdown. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I got back to work, reviewing data from a logistics firm where a woman named Mina had just uncovered that her male colleagues were out-earning her by nearly 30%. Again. Different city, different company, same playbook. Only this time she had us. You see, I used to think the most powerful moment in my story was the morning I slid that resignation folder across the CEO's desk. But it wasn't. The real power came later. Quietly, persistently, when I turned what happened to me into something systematic, measurable, and irreversible. They offered me 40% less. They thought I would swallow it, smile through it, grind quietly beneath it. Instead, I made them see the cost of their own neglect and turned that insult into infrastructure. Now, whenever someone shrugs and says, company policy, to justify injustice, there's a voice behind them now. Mine. And it doesn't whisper anymore. It writes policies, signs offers, audits power, and builds futures where no one is left doubting their worth.